As you can see, we're going to be rolling a little bit with the punches. This is sort of de facto for a virtual press conference. We originally were going to have this back in March and right around when COVID hit. And so we're really excited to have this opportunity to reintroduce Capital Good Fund and what we're doing. Our work is even more relevant now in the COVID era. A couple of housekeeping items. So this meeting is being recorded, so we can share it around later. Everyone should be muted by default, and you can feel free to ask questions in the chat. For reporters who are on, we'll have a Q&A with the Senator and myself, probably around 11:35. So by way of introducing the Senator, we actually met in 2015 at an event in, I believe it was Newport. And as my wife and I were getting ready to leave, we saw the Senator, and I decided to go up and introduce myself. And when I mentioned Capital Good Fund's work addressing predatory lending, like payday lending, he immediately said, "That's an issue we want addressed. I want you to come to Delaware." He introduced me to his staff, who introduced me to Matt and Amy at Discover, who will speak in a little bit. And here we are 5 years later, operating throughout Delaware. So without further ado, Senator, I welcome you to make some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Andy. And I hope that you can all hear me. Just one of the things I've learned on Zoom is my opening comment ought to be, can everybody hear me? The great news is that everybody can hear and see the potential and the impact of Capital Good Fund and your work. As Andy correctly described, it was a chance encounter in Rhode Island 5 years ago, partly facilitated by my friend and colleague, Senator Jack Reed, who's long been an advocate for making capital available for folks who are unbanked, who are at the margins of the American financial system. It was that introduction that helped open the opportunity that we're celebrating today, which is the expansion of Capital Good Fund's work here in Delaware. As Andy mentioned, we're in the middle of 3 different crises right now that makes their work more relevant than ever. We are, of course, suffering through the greatest public health challenge in a century, the pandemic that has shut down so many states and so much of our economy and has thrown millions out of work. We had over 1 million new unemployment filings just over a week ago. As I was trying to get my head around that, that's as if the entire state of Delaware filed for unemployment on the same day. That's had a particularly strong impact on Black and brown communities, on those at the margins of our society. And there is a renewed national focus on equity, on the ways in which there is an inequitable access to healthcare, to education, and to capital. And one of the things that Andy and his team bring is the opportunity to combat predatory payday lending or car title lending. One of the things we talked about was how our former state treasurer, former governor, Jack Markell, had worked so hard to try and strengthen the network, the resources here in Delaware. In my work with the Eye of a Dream Foundation, in my time in county government, I over and over saw the ways in which working Delawareans paid outrageous rates for things like payday lending or rent-to-own or car title loans. And so we're here to celebrate what you're bringing to Delaware and what we might be able to do together. As we all know, but as it bears repeating, before the pandemic, study after study showed that more than half of Americans had no effective liquidity. They had no real savings for a crisis, for a major appliance burning out, or for a utility bill coming due, a family illness, or an unexpected death where they had to pay for burial. Now with 180,000 Americans dead because of COVID-19, the number of working families that have had to pay unexpected burial costs has skyrocketed. Now with 55 million Americans having filed for unemployment at some point in the last 6 months because of a bungled federal response to this pandemic, they've had those unexpected costs. And that has thrown millions of Americans into a debt trap from which they often can't escape, a cycle of borrowing, lending, and paying at exorbitant rates. That's where Matt Parks and the folks at Discover come in. After that propitious first meeting with Andy, I connected him to Andrew Dinsmore in my office, and JJ Singh, who some of you know used to work with me. Andrew Dinsmore and JJ Singh worked together to connect you to the great folks at Discover Bank. I know Matt Parks and Amy Walls are on with us. They're not an easy sell. So they did their due diligence. They dug deep. They liked what they saw. They connected Matt to Longwood Foundation and helped get you started. And what we are mostly celebrating here today is the availability of your terrific loan products throughout Delaware because of the hiring of Denise Francisco. I also, in closing, want to mention that I'm the senior Democrat on the Financial Services Appropriations Subcommittee. And one of the things I have fought very hard for is funding for community development financial institutions, or so-called CDFIs. You are an exemplar of what CDFIs can make possible. Better access to capital, better access to credit on favorable and reasonable terms in ways that meet Americans where they are. The current administration has made sure that billions of dollars of assistance that were provided through stimulus payments, through unemployment surpluses, were not available to those who are undocumented. And there are existing barriers to access to credit that have made real opportunity unavailable to Americans at the margins of our society. The Capital Good Fund is here to fill that gap and to help make those loans and to help make them easy to get and affordable to pay. So I just could not thank you more for being a part of Delaware. I'm excited about your expansion here, and I'm hoping that with the circle of people who are on this call together and with our media, we can help more Delawareans become aware of the great opportunity that you're providing to folks in need. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Matt and Amy. And thank you to everybody else who's going to speak, Bernice and the folks and Rashmi, who are a part of our credit union community here in Delaware, and the others who've been such a great part of helping make this credit story real on the ground in Delaware. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Senator. And so, again, I'm Andy Posner. Despite what it says on my Zoom, I'm on my wife's account. So thank you for bearing with that. But I'm the founder and CEO here at Capital Good Fund. And as the Senator mentioned, we're a community development financial institution based in Rhode Island. And I want to speak a little bit about why we're in Delaware. So Delaware is a state that has a particularly strong payday loan lobby and industry. In 2018, 75,000 residents took out a payday loan or a similar type of predatory product. And the average interest rate, and I had to double check this, is over 500%. You can get a payday loan as high as 3,600% in the state of Delaware. And under the current administration, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau rescinded a rule that the prior administration had promoted or promulgated that would have reined in some of the practices of the industry. And all of this was before COVID. So 130,000 unemployment claims have been filed in Delaware. Tragically, over 600 Delawareans have perished as a result of the coronavirus. And so we have seen a tremendous uptick in demand for our products and services. We offer loans of $300 to $25,000 for a variety of things like the vehicle purchase or repair, immigration expenses, emergencies, and we're very proud to have rolled out a crisis relief loan in response to COVID. And to speak a little bit about that, I want to introduce Denise Francisco, who is our Delaware customer service rep. And she actually has some personal experience with a lot of the issues that we try to address. So Denise, if you could just speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. How is everyone doing? As Andy mentioned, I am Denise. As far as financially struggling, I have experienced that. A few years ago, I was let go from my job. I had to figure out how I was going to feed my child, how I was going to feed myself, how I was going to keep a roof over our heads, pay our bills. And it wore on me mentally, emotionally, physically. So when I speak to clients, whether potential or existing, and they tell me their situation and they tell me their story, I can genuinely say, I understand where it is that you're coming from. I understand the situation that you're in. I get it. I was there, and it could really take a toll on you.
Thank you for that. And we have had 4 consecutive months of record loan volume. We're also proud to have been able to put 18% of our active loans into a deferment to work with clients to give them some breathing room during this tough time. And we recently did our 600th crisis relief loan. Now, you're on the front line, so I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about what you've been seeing with folks calling in. What are people facing?
It's been every situation you can probably and possibly come up with. I've heard we have, as of recently, because of the pandemic, we have clients dealing with deaths, whether it's mother, father, brother. I had one individual who's, it seemed like their entire family was affected by COVID. We have financial struggles, the same as myself, you know, how I'm going to pay my rent. I lost my job. I'm being evicted. I have to feed my child. The most recent experience that I had was a woman. During the pandemic, her husband left her. She was evicted and she had two small children and was living out of her car. So she called in to us, to the company, of course, and asking for a loan. It was afraid because she's reached out to other financial institutions and has been turned away. So I walked her through the process. We don't, as customer service, we don't follow up with customers. I don't follow the application, but she did call back in. And I just so happened to get the call, and all I heard was nothing but appreciation. She told me how she was able to find an apartment, was able to pay for it, was able to take care of her children. It was tears and joy, and I was extremely excited for her because, again, I was there, and to have someone give you a chance when no one else would is the best feeling in the world.
And one of the things, and this ties back to what Senator was saying, we serve people regardless of immigration status. And we know that a lot of people were excluded from the CARES Act and that the CARES Act wasn't insufficient to meet the need. So we're really providing crucial liquidity. And I'll note that the crisis loan goes from $300 to $1,500. It has just a 5% interest rate, a 3-month deferment period right off the bat, and then 12 monthly payments. It gets reported to the credit bureaus, so you build your credit, and our borrowers are able to use it for the things that Denise mentioned: rent, utilities, security deposit, vehicle repair, food, clothing, etc. And we are prepared to do hundreds, if not thousands, of loans in Delaware for this product. So lastly, Denise, could you just speak, how does someone apply for a crisis relief loan with Capital Good Fund?
Of course, it's super, super easy. Just visit our website. I think Andy may have posted it in the chat. The application is really straightforward. We no longer offer an online portal where you have to create an account. So you would just log on to our website. The first thing that you're faced with is an eligibility form. You fill out the eligibility form. If you are eligible, it then leads you to the application. The application as well is super straightforward. And depending on the application type, or sorry, the loan type, you would have to submit documents 2 to 3 months worth of bank statements along with other documents, but everything is listed on the website.
Wonderful. And lastly, I will note that all of our front-facing, client-facing staff are bilingual, English, Spanish, and you do not need to come into the office. We're an online lender, so it's very COVID-friendly to get a loan. All right, wonderful. I'd like to turn it over to Matt and Blanche before we move to Q&A. So Matt Parks is with Director of Community Investment Act work at Discover Bank, and he is one of the people that made our work in the state possible. So Matt.
Andy, thank you very much, and Senator, thanks for joining us. We would have thought, back in 2015, what we've been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. And I got to commend Andy and his team. It's something more than remarkable. Senator, and for members of the press, there's not a lot of CFIs, and you mentioned CFIs. There's not a lot of CFIs in this country that focus on the consumer. Most CFIs in this country focus on, various types of real estate and commercial development. But Andy, had a much different model in wanting to help the consumer, which, Amy and I searched far and wide for organizations that are, really focused on the consumer, and Andy was able to fill that need. We started out with, as Andy mentioned, an immigration loan program to help folks that are eligible to apply for citizenship or to help other family members gain some legalized status. I mean, as you recall, back in the late 2015, 2016, this immigration was a pretty hot topic at the time. We wanted to make sure capital was available to consumers to be able to pay fees or take classes, apply for application, things of that nature. And Andy was able to deliver fourfold. And we actually started in Delaware. We were able to do it. Andy, we did it in Florida, Rhode Island, a couple different states. We were able to do it. So with that, Andy was always interested in expanding his other products and services. And I said, Andy, you got to come to Delaware here. And I know just the partner to help you, generate more capital, leverage capital. And that's with our friends at Stepping Stones Credit Union. Before we turn it over to Blanche, I did say we actually have partnered on a couple other smaller loan programs, Senator, you may not be aware of, but we started with Project You Start, a program you might have know about here in Delaware at the Widener University, where they take folks returning from prison. And what we found is that they have very small basic needs, whether it's, again, to get a job certification, to buy work boots or a hard hat, different materials, and there's no one there to lend money for that, and they either have to go get granted and get it, or they go without. So we contacted Andy, and Andy's making, I think Andy loans as low as $100 to the Project New Start participants over 12 months. It's nothing more than a phenomenal program, and I think we've had nothing but success. So here are folks coming out of prison, we're giving them micro consumer loans. And we're going to see how it happens so they can build their credit as they're hopefully getting back into society, which I think is extremely important. And lastly, we're partnered with Nemours. So for folks that have brought their children to the hospital and they may not have availability or access to capital to bring their children home, unfortunately, it's an unfortunate situation. Maybe their child was diagnosed with some ailment or some problem, and they have to either make renovations to their home or maybe need to figure out how to pay for a new prescription. But we again make very small micro loans up to actually bigger loans in this program. The folks that need to get themselves in order to be able to reunite their children with their families after a very unfortunate circumstance. So with Stepping Stones, we're looking to build upon this dramatically. With the federal deposit insurance that we have at Stepping Stones, we're hoping to be able to lend more money, make more capital access available, and make it extremely sustainable. And one of the ways we're going to start to introduce that, as you know, so Senator, we're going to be building our building on the SAR campus, University of Delaware, and included in that building on the SAR campus, we're going to have a financial health program, which hopefully Andy, Stepping Stones, and others can serve as an example of how to provide access to credit in a safe and sound way, utilizing Delaware and the Mid-Atlantic region, and of course, hopefully a lot of smart engineering students and business school students to start to really study this and develop these products and services that Andy is able to distribute to the community. And thinking big, hopefully Stepping Stones can be a huge part of being able to build that not only in Delaware, but hopefully all across the country. So with that, Blanche, I thought I would turn it over to you to say a few words.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning.
Good morning, Blanche.
I want to thank everyone in Discover for inviting us.
I still have a job among people. Yes.
You're going to have to substitute maybe, Rashmi.
Well, I keep hearing something in the background, and maybe it's just me. Okay, so Stepping Stones is the smallest credit union in the state of Delaware. Our mission is to provide affordable financial services to all of the residents and citizens and businesses in the city of Wilmington. As the smallest credit union, we form strategic partnerships that will allow us to offer a variety of different services and loans to our members. And that's what we see with our partnership with Capital Good Fund. They will allow us to provide loans and services to our membership while we strengthen our institution in non-financial lending. So I welcome Andy and Capital Good Fund to Delaware. I'm looking forward to our partnership together. I see us doing many, many great things for the citizens of Delaware. So then, Andy, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I should note that in pre-COVID times, Idenise was working out of Stepping Stone's office in Wilmington. And I should also note that Idenise, we were able to hire her thanks to a generous grant from the Longwood Foundation, who I believe are also on the call. So thank you so much to them. So I'd love to open it up to Q&A to members of the press who may be on or anyone else. You can chat any questions or just unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, Senator. This is Jake Owens. I'm editor of Delaware Business Times up in Wilmington. How you doing today?
Great to be on with you, Jake. Thanks for being with us.
Appreciate it. Just a couple quick things. Obviously, the work that the CDFIs are doing is a great service to the community. But I'm just wondering, what's keeping Congress from addressing some of the predatory loan practices? Why do we need CDFIs to kind of help fill that gap? Is there something we can do to help cap, payday loan fees in particular? Something that would help address some of the large scale issues.
Well, Jake, thanks for the question. As Andy referenced, the CFPB actually went all the way through findings, recommendations, initial publication, and had a regulation that would have significantly trimmed predatory payday lending practices that was just reversed by this administration. I think that'll be a high priority for a next administration, if there is one, if it's the Biden-Harris administration, is to make sure that the CFPB is able to do its work unimpeded. There are, as you heard at the outset from Andy, 75,000 Delawareans who are taking payday loans every year, many of them at simply outrageous rates. This is something that's been discussed and attempted to be addressed in Delaware, so far unsuccessfully. And part of what made me so excited when I got to meet Andy and to hear about his work in Capital Good Fund is, you have to have an alternative. One of the points that the folks who represent payday lenders make when they come and argue to either the state legislature or to members of Congress is that they make loans to people who have no other alternative. Well, part of what Capital Good Fund is doing is demonstrating that it is possible to have safe, sound, well-capitalized alternatives. It's possible in part because of CRA contributions, because of charitable contributions. Without Discover Bank, without the Longwood Foundation, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation today. But Stepping Stones Credit Union and the great work that they're already doing is a reminder that we've got the institutions, between Capital Good Fund, Stepping Stones, and the CDFI Fund, we've got the funding and we've got the institutions that can provide the alternative. Now CFPB simply needs to be allowed to do their job and to prevent predatory lending. That's a simple political and policy choice, and one that I would expect would be reversed were there to be a new administration.
And I'll just note that the rule they rescinded was not particularly onerous. I mean, all it required was that a lender conduct an ability to pay test. So in other words, the industry did not want to be forced to determine that a borrower could afford the loan. And the reason is because they actually only make money when the borrower cannot afford the loan. Another thing about federal action, and I know the senators are supportive of this, is the expiration of the enhanced unemployment has been very damaging for the people that we serve and for low-income Delawareans and people around the country. So we really hope that Congress will renew that. We have already seen a surge in customers reaching out to us, asking if we can extend their deferment period, which we're of course happy to do, but we wish that people were not in that situation.
Andy's already touching on my other question. So, aside from the expanded unemployment assistance, I'm wondering, Senator, when the PPP program closed out in August, we still had more than $100 billion in unallocated funds. I'm wondering why Congress isn't looking at reopening that program and maybe prioritizing disproportionately impacted businesses or minority-owned businesses, to try to touch some of these sectors that maybe need some additional help.
Thanks for the question, Jake. As I think you know, my office wrote the Prioritized Paycheck Protection Program bill. It was co-sponsored by Senators Cardin and Shaheen, who are the top two Democrats on the Small Business Committee. Ultimately, it's won support from Senator Rubio, the chairman of Small Business. He proposed some modifications that I embrace. What it would do is allow that $100 billion remaining unexpended in the PPP program to be given out to nonprofits and small businesses that suffered a greater than 35% revenue loss. And it would have similar repayment terms and timelines as the previous PPP. because it would be given to those businesses and nonprofits that have already successfully received one. Those funds could be delivered in fairly quick order. Senator Rubio has also advocated for additional funding that would be targeted at businesses and nonprofits that are in opportunity zones, something I would support. I actually was just communicating with Senator Shaheen earlier this morning about, sort of what are you hearing? What do you think is going to happen when we get back to session on Tuesday? And I'm reaching out to Chairman Rubio today or tomorrow. This is one of the areas that has actually been positive, bipartisan. We've had oversight hearings, we've had conversations, and I think the experience over the last 4 months of working with Senator Rubio and Chairman Rubio and Ranking Member Cardin has overall been very positive. The amount of funding that's been distributed through the PPP program is truly remarkable. It's more than 5 million loans of, I think, more than $540 billion. There's been a significant impact here in Delaware. We could certainly get you, Jake, the latest numbers for Delaware, but it's something that has actually worked out of the whole range of legislation that we've engaged in over the last 4 months. It is deeply frustrating that Majority Leader McConnell sent us home for August without having reached a deal. President Trump, as you know, signed a couple of executive orders of uncertain legality and uneven impact. One of them was this attempt at extending a $300 unemployment benefit that has not yet come online for Delaware and for most other states. My hope is that when we get back into session starting next Tuesday, we will quickly take up and pass a Senate version to match up with the HEROES Act that the House passed more than 2 months ago and get something moving to the president's desk.
And that actually segues to, there was a question about our emergency coaching. And, the executive order speaks to this issue of there are millions of Americans who are suddenly finding themselves trying to navigate our patchwork, insufficient social safety net. And so we created this hotline so people could contact our coaching department for help to how to navigate that. And because one of the biggest things that people are struggling with now is just uncertainty, right? I mean, they're applying for SNAP benefits for the first time. They're figuring out how to get on Medicaid. Now they're trying to understand, is their state going to participate in this, unemployment that's going to be offered through the executive order? Is it legal? Is it not? And so that's why we created the emergency coaching hotline, so that people could access that. One of the interesting things is that we're actually seeing the average household income for recipients of our crisis relief loan is $3,300, which is $500 a month more than what we would normally see for a similarly sized loan. In other words, it's people who normally are just getting by and don't necessarily need a loan, who are just suddenly thrown into this situation where they can't make ends meet. There was also a question about the point about undocumented workers. So the CARES Act, the stimulus payouts were excluded. Undocumented people were excluded. And Senator, correct me if I'm wrong, but if anyone in your family was undocumented, you were excluded, right?
Correct. It was a remarkably broad and I think cruel way to ensure that families, even those mixed families where some are U.S. citizens and some are could not benefit from stimulus payments.
And just, the broader point is that, we are extremely pro-immigrant, documented or undocumented. We know that community has been marginalized over the last 4 years and demonized. And they're the ones who are doing a lot of the frontline work. They're back doing haircuts and working in factories and as nannies. And the fact that they're not accessing the stimulus funds, they're more likely to be unbanked. They don't have much legal protections if they want to complain or call out sick. And they're often not able to access loans because of their immigrant status, makes it so, is one of the reasons why it's so important that we're able to lend to people regardless of immigration status. We don't ask, we just make sure that the person can afford the loan and can verify the identity, and we are able to provide the loan. So that's why it's just so important that we provide the crisis loans to them, but also that's why we do immigration loans, right? We do loans for citizenship, green card, family petitions. These loans are often in the $5,000 range. like with anything, if you have a good lawyer, there's usually a way for you to win your case. And in this case, that means not being deported. It means being able to petition family members. So we love our immigrant brothers and sisters. We know they're incredibly important to contribute. They contribute to the economy and our culture and everything, and we want to do what we can to support them. Any other questions?
Kylie, did we answer all of your questions?
Hi, yes, thank you very much. You did. I think the topic about the undocumented workers, especially in our viewership, we cover Sussex County. So I know that that's obviously an important topic around here. And we just want to make sure we have all the information. If any of our viewers are undocumented or know someone who is undocumented, that they can get the financial help that they need if they need it. So thank you.
Yes,
Thanks,
you just have to have an ITIN in some way of verifying identity and verifying income. Great, Senator, I don't know if you wanted to make some closing remarks.
Yep, one thing I'll say in closing, if I might, is just that one of the things my folks and I delight in doing is constituent services. So to anybody who is still watching from the press and cares to report it, the link to my office is coons.senate.gov. We're always available at 302-573-6345, and we help with Medicare and Medicaid, with immigration, with veteran status, with trying to get expedited either an unemployment check or Social Security check. We enjoy doing that. We've got great folks here who do that in all 3 counties. So this is a big part of constituent service. One of the challenges and one of the blessings of the last 6 months has been the opportunity to help lots of Delawareans as we all try and get through this together. Let me just say to Blanche and Stepping Stones, to Matt and the folks at Discover, and to you, Andy, and Denise, thank you for bringing a great resource to Delaware, for helping us get through this in a way that makes sure that everyone has an opportunity. And I look forward to working with you to make sure that as many Delawareans as possible know about this great opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for your advocacy for marginalized communities. And I want to make a nonpartisan reminder to everyone that they should go to vote.org, make sure you're registered to vote no matter how you plan to vote. If you want to vote absentee, request your absentee ballot. We want to make sure everyone who's eligible participates in the process, and please wear a mask and maintain physical distance if you can. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.